I've got like, 20% of my savings in Betterment, and then I got my Robinhood, and then I have my Bank of America. It's like literally spread all over. Do you have all of your savings in Raisin?
All my non-retirement, non-stock savings are in Raisin. In fact, I was a Raisin customer before I became the CEO.
Let's get started. So Chetan, looking at your LinkedIn profile, you've had a really rich professional journey. So my first question to you is understanding what has been the biggest influence in your life and how this has shaped your career path.
So I think you can look at the influence on the people or the experiences. I think from experiences perspective, growing up, I was good at analytical things. That's why I thought I should be an engineer. I became an engineer. I practiced engineering, and I said maybe I should stop doing an engineering. So I think living through those experiences really helped me to really understand what I want, what I do not want. I used to, and I still do a lot of interviews with younger people who are just joining to the careers, and I admire to those who absolutely knows what they wanted to do in their next 40 years, 50 years of their career. I wasn't one of those people.
Mhm.
I just went with the flow. But my experiences basically taught me what I like, what I don't like, and brought me here. And in terms of the people, I don't think I ever had a like perfect role model on anything. That being said, there is something I aspire to learn from everyone. Hopefully, in most cases, that's on what to do. In many cases, it is what not to do. But I'm a big believer of learning from others, and those experiences has shaped me a ton.
So you mentioned, you're learning what to do and what not to do. What's what's something that you learned early on what not to do?
Um, Again, there is no right or wrong thing in careers, right? There is everybody builds their career differently. Career progression is very different. Some start slow and then gets faster. Some starts really fast and gets slower. There is no linearity on this thing. But there is one thing, partly it is learning, partly it is acknowledging like how I am wired, but the authenticity.
Mm.
Because I have observed certain career paths to grow really, really fast and then suddenly stall. And I don't know if I can create a perfect correlation or causation there, but at least there was some correlation in my experience that people who act on the way they think they should act, it definitely carries the career to a certain level because those people are acting the way that they should be acting. But at some point, it catches up to them. So, if anything, that reinforce my authenticity belief on how you not only live your career but also live your life. So when I look at my core values, authenticity is clearly a one big one of them. And I've seen both that's working really well for people and not so great for some others.
I love that. I once heard that with human energy and human frequency, that the highest frequency that your human body can actually experience is when you are in full authenticity to who you truly are. So I love that you mentioned it. And so I'm curious, you early in the interview you said that you're a very analytical person. So is that authentic to how you're operating now with your personal life and your professional life?
100%. I think like with authenticity and analytics actually comes really well because I always aspire to truth seek in life. Like in problem solving, there's no agenda that I go into any conversation that I am in, whether it is with people who are in my team, whether it is the external entities and investors. When I hear a different points of view, my goal is not to prove the point, but my goal is to understand what's the truth. And that's very much aligned with authenticity. I think that truth-seeking nature I think authenticity and truth-seeking goes hand in hand. And analytical mindset definitely is a big asset when it comes to truth-seeking.
Absolutely. And I always find that to be so challenging, especially nowadays where there's information that can be argued for all sides coming at you left and right through social media and news outlet, right? And for me, I find myself to get really lost where I'm always trying to find truth, as you said, like seeking different perspectives. But how do you find a truth when you are constantly bombarded with different information all the time? Like, what is the truth?
Yeah. To be frank, in order to find the truth, we need to be open, listening all the sides of the stories, and have an open mind to it. In fact, that's one other thing that I learned throughout my career in I'm not going to say the hard way, but definitely took me a while because I had so much to say early in my career. And then there was a very influential person in my life, in the professional life, whom I learned how to critically listen to people really, really well. And finding the truth comes with critical listening. And during that critical listening, I think the key is only asking clarifying questions as opposed
Mm.
to imposing your own thinking and values to the other person. So, listening critically, being open to at least hearing what different side of the story is coming from, I think this is the only way to find the truth, if you will.
Mm. And how do you teach that to your leaders in the company? Because it's, it's one thing to learn to do it yourself, and it's already a very hard thing to learn to critically listen, but then to be able to teach that to your team, how do you do it?
Yeah, I think as I get more senior, like when I was more junior, still managing new people, teaching is easier because people who just left the college coming into a workforce already are in that learning mode. As people grow in their career, that learning mode keeps coming down further and further. And there are two techniques that I found to be quite valuable. The one is going to sound obvious, but lead by example. Just do the thing that you keep telling. I think in my leadership meetings, I listen. When I am listening, I only ask the critical questions like, "Can you please clarify? I'm not following that portion."
Mm.
So leading by example is number one thing. The second thing is when somebody in the team does the similar thing, shows that they are critically listening, really elevating that person in front of others. Because
Mm.
like humans are actually quite simple creatures when it comes to how we motivate them. And you can either motivate by the carrot or the stick. And when you praise people on one thing that they have done really, really well, suddenly all the other people around them looks to that experience and wants to repeat the same thing. So just praising the people, something that has been done well, typically trains people, all the other people,
Yeah.
that maybe I should do the same thing to get the same praise. I mean, it sounds very childish and simple, but it works.
Yeah, it works because people are, as you said, we're very simple. And yeah, and I'm curious because you've had a very vast experience in many different types of leadership role. Has your leadership philosophy changed, especially in the recent years? And what are some of the things that you're still learning as a leader today?
Yeah. So when I think about the core values, I don't think that changed drastically. Like authenticity, I mentioned, that came from childhood. Like those are the core values that hopefully now that I'm a parent, I give to my children, and it's gonna live with them for the rest of their lives. But there are a ton of incremental things that keeps coming, and I think learning is something that's never gonna end by age whatsoever. I think lately the big learnings that I am going through is speed of which that I am operating, because I spent nearly 2 decades in larger companies in a non-engineering capacity in financial sector, and the life moves at certain speeds in those organizations, and I get used to that. I've been in more of a startup environment in the last 3 years. Life demands and operates in a much faster speed. And that's been a transition for me and on setting the business routines, the practices that I am following. And so that's a never ending story. And
Right.
then I always look at the learnings as two different type of learnings. There are hardcore skills and soft skills. And people tend to focus on hard skills, but soft skills are far harder to both acquire and practice on. What I have mentioned is closer to the softer skills, and there's a ton of harder skills, obviously, as my role has changed to a more senior role in a smaller organization. There are a series of hard skills that I need to go through on how to talk with investors, how to talk with the board, etc. But I always found harder skills are so much easier to acquire because you just practice once, twice. It's
Mm,
learning math kind of a thing, as opposed to changing your own wiring, which
right.
takes years and years to go through.
Absolutely. And for someone who has been hardwired a certain way, what advice would you give to people who are learning, who are trying to learn soft skills and who are trying to have higher EQ, as they say?
So the good news is I have, as hard as it sounds, EQ can be improved drastically. I've observed that in my own life. I think the key thing is every one of us have unproductive behaviors in life. Those unproductive behaviors coming in most of the cases from our childhood. In one of two factors, either we used to do something when we were a child and our parents told us not to do that thing and we stopped doing it. And even when we become older, we don't do that thing and it is not good. Or vice versa, we do something silly, people love it, and then we keep doing the same thing, which may no longer be either relevant or productive anymore.
Yeah.
I think the key is number one, noticing those things, which comes with listening and great feedback sessions with people whom you trust. And then once you notice those things, understand the negative impact that you create around people. Once you understand that negative, and the next step is finding out where that is coming from. It's throughout my career, I've gone through a series of seminars on how to basically improve and remove these unconstructive behaviors, if you will. And once you find out where it is coming from, and once you find out the impact of this unproductive behavior, correcting that behavior becomes a much easier thing to do than in the past. And obviously, going through these seminars, teaching these mechanisms learning these tools is incredibly important. But it again all boils down to be open to feedback, listen what others are saying, have a as low of a barrier as you create, because it's hard to hear a negative feedback from someone. And just don't react to it. If you disagree, you just sleep on it, and then next day think about it. It's coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
There are no evils who's going to tell you that you're bad. It's all
Yeah.
coming from us.
But it's always the ego that's like, this isn't true. Like, how dare they? But and then you realize, okay, well, they're saying this because they care and they want to see you grow. So I'm curious.
100%.
In throughout the years, what's been the hardest feedback that you received, but that gave you the biggest growth opportunity, either personally or professionally, whichever you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, there's so many. um, I don't know if this is the most important one probably one of the more memorable one. Um, I was in a this professional. I was in a leadership role. There's around maybe 30 people directly reporting to me, but I'm in charge of a bigger project where I have to rely on a series of other teams. And at that point in my career, I was a senior director. I very vividly remember trying to aspire to be an executive VP at the time, which was the cutoff point in our organization at the time. And I went to my manager and I said, by the way, the project is not going well because some of those other teams are not pulling their weight, if you will, in my opinion at the time. Whether it was right or wrong, I don't know. But I went to my manager and I said, this is unfair. You
Mm,
give me all the accountability, but you do not give me full responsibility. There are a bunch of other teams out there that I'm not responsible for, but I am the accountable from the overall project. And by the way, this person is whom I aspire a ton in my life. Her name is Melissa McSherry. She's been my manager for many, many years. She started to laugh out loud and then said, welcome to adulthood. As you get more and more senior, you're going to get more and more accountability without the
yeah,
direct responsibility. And that
for sure.
just hit me so hard because it was so true. But that is the moment I start to think like, okay, like we have a real problem at hand that I need to solve. Apparently, I'm going to get more accountability and less responsibility as I grow up. And how am I going to live in that world? So it's been a big, big, big learning for me. And I not only made peace of it, I think it is the right thing to do. Now I truly believe in that. And Melissa, if you are listening, thank you.
Yeah. That's a big one. It's definitely a big pill to swallow because yeah, as you said, like you're not responsible for a lot of people in departments and yet you have to be accountable. And one, like what does that even mean, right? And I think a lot of people have a hard time fully understanding what full accountability and ownership means, both personally and in a professional context.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think when you actually realize that there are more things that are within your realm of control and you can take accountability for what you can control, you realize that that's kind of the start of how do I say that's like the beginning of like learning to really take full control of your life again, both personally and professionally.
It's a very big milestone in someone's growth, if you will, personal and professional.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm gonna try to dive us back into some of the questions that I sent you. I realize that I've kind of digressed quite a bit. So could you walk us through a
That's
typical
okay.
day in your life as the CEO of Raisin?
Yeah. So if you look at just a typical day, I think there's only one thing that I always try to do. First of all, I think raising US is small enough that I'm aware of pretty much everything going on. But I am living in that constant mode of do I intervene or do I not intervene?
Mm,
But this is a very snapshot view that can only be better understood if I explain the full life cycle on a annual cycle, if you will.
sure.
I think everything starts for me on setting big, audacious goals to people and for the organization. And once you said that, by the way, it takes some getting used to because, again, we are wired or trained through our college days that we want to put goals in front of us that we can only achieve, as opposed to putting audacious goals that we may not be able to achieve, but that's okay. So that in itself is a process to walk people through comfortably to sign up their names to a really audacious goals that there's a more than 50% chance that they may not ever achieve that goal. And then along the way, just give people as much context as possible because I think in any organization, the higher you go up in the organization, people have more context. The lower you go into organization, people have more facts. And junior people makes micro decisions every single day, and they can make those decisions far more productively if they have the full context. With that
Mm.
context setting, audacious goal, and creating OKRs or whatever people wants to call in their organization, creating quarterly goals, then the rest becomes actually quite easier than supporting people. Every person requires a different type of support. Some people requires don't touch me. I know my goal. I'm gonna get there on my own. That's okay. Some people wants me to be part of their problem. That's okay. But once you set the year that way or the quarter that way, day to day becomes all about is the train going in the right tracks? If it is not, I just keep observing. If it is coming out of the tracks, that's when I engage and say, hey, why don't we do this different way? Or hey, this doesn't seem to be right. What else we can do?
Mm.
But that's day of the life. Just having conversations with people, understanding where things are going, and really keeping my mouth shut on the areas, which sometimes is hard, by the way, because if things are going reasonably well from outcome perspective, not everyone is going to follow the same footsteps that I have done, as long as there's no collateral damage. And just because I wouldn't do it that way should not be the reason that I should be intervened. Only when things are not going in the right direction, then I engage with like how can we correct and how can I help.
Has that been different since becoming the CEO of Raisin? Because you've been the COO at Fundbox, which I believe is around like 300, 400 people now, and you've also been at Capital One. So these are really large
Correct.
organizations, and going from that to a smaller startup. uh, do you find yourself stopping or getting involved in the track of uh, things earlier on because there's less runway, or is it still kind of the same process for you?
I think process is the same. The at the moment emotions might be different, and I may need to control myself more. Context setting becomes even more important as the organization gets larger and larger. But the in the moment control, it definitely requires more control because many of the functions that, like as a CEO, everybody comes from a track, and I have gone through multiple tracks. But it's not like I've done every single track that my leadership team has done, and it's always that constant check of do I intervene or do I not intervene? And I think that's the part. In lately, what I have done is just because I would have done it differently should not be the reason that I should intervene here. I think the key is, do we reach to the outcome or do we expect to reach to the outcome or not? If the answer is yes, and we do not have a collateral damage, then it's okay. It doesn't have to be my way.
Mm-hmm. And for anyone who might be interested in taking the jump from being an operator, being a COO or VP level role to a CEO role, what advice would you have for them?
So first of all, like COO president roles are perfect setup, and CEO may mean multiple teams, but definitely president roles are perfect setup to CEO roles. And when I was getting into that role, one person actually told me that, hey, you'll do a great job. I said, why? Because you ask really critical questions. So in these roles, I think I'm going to go back to the listening really well, and asking a critical question when things doesn't add up, because there are very accomplished people here. I think it is everybody can manage their function really, really well. But what we want to make sure is the whole ship goes in the right direction, and things are not going to add up at times. And at that moment, just asking that right question is super important. So the advice that I can give is you don't have to be as see like even at very, very junior roles, if you ask yourself, how can I do my job in the best way, is not the best way to prepare yourself for a broader leadership role. But if you say, I'm giving a decision. What would the owner of this company think? Let's think about more small business terms. Or what would, if I would be the owner of this organization, would I still give that decision? So putting also always yourself into the owner of that organization. I've done that throughout my career, by the way. I don't know why, I don't know how, but any decision that I was giving, I was checking with, not with my direct responsibility area, but it is, had I had zero limitations, had I be
Mm,
the CEO, would I still give the same decision? I think that thought exercise, you don't need to be a senior person. You can start doing that starting from the first job.
and it's proven to work because you've had a very successful career. So that's definitely something that I'd love to take back to my team and share with them. So going into finance and banking, tell us a little bit about, what Raisin is doing and the role the company is playing to revolutionize the financial industry.
Yeah. So, in most layman's terms, I think Raisin is a savings marketplace. You've seen much of marketplaces in different settings. I think from consumer perspective, consumers can come to the Raisin platform. They're going to see a series of banks. As of today, we have 56 credit unions and banks in our platform. They're going to be able to open a single Raisin account. And with that single Raisin account, they can go invest their money to any of these 56 banks. Every single one of them is federally insured. And as a result, it's almost like a one-stop shop. Now, compare this to two alternatives, like consumers can do a similar thing by shopping around on their own. But if you have ever opened a new account, the rate changes. Now you want to take that money to put that somewhere else. You can't do that because I need to close an account. And then there's a bunch of friction in the system that makes it really, really, really hard. Or you want to put multiple banks, you need to open multiple accounts. So there's a lot of friction in the system. Now there are services that I'm sure you have seen. You can compare different rates, etc. But this is not just about comparing the rates, right? It is we are a fully functional operational platform. You come in, be part of it, and then you don't need to go through the are you the I'm going to use a banking jargon of KYC AML, know your customer, and anti-money laundering. You just go do it once and it is over. You just keep doing it and investing. So the consumer value proposition is amazing. Obviously, to create that consumer value proposition, there should be a bank value proposition as well, and credit union value proposition, and that's where the smaller there are 4,000 plus banks and a little bit more credit unions in the United States, and they do lending in their community incredibly well. These companies are mostly have great ties to their community, commercial relationships. But in order to do that lending, they need deposits, but they don't have the scale to raise the deposit nationwide. And that's where we come in. We work with the banks and credit unions to create them an alternate form of deposit raising, which we are just another tool in their deposit raising platform. So it's an amazing value proposition for banks proven by the speed of growth that we have observed in United States, and an amazing value proposition for the consumers. When I was interviewing last year this time, I absolutely fell in love with the business model because this truly is a win-win-win value proposition for everyone involved.
Mm. So how, in your opinion, I guess why hasn't larger institutions like changed to offer similar values to the consumers?
That's a great question. So I think there's two way of I can dissect your question. One is when you look at the rates in our platform, as of today, as we are talking right now, if you look at the savings rate, it is 5.3%. And if you look at CDs, it is 5.5, plus minus 5 pips around that. But if you look at the common savings brand names, they are more like high fours. So first of all, why are they not giving higher rates is one way of thinking about the problem.
Mm,
And I think the answer to that question is creating like this solution is it's really hard. Like I've done deposits in my previous companies. Like I think at Capital One, well over $10 billion deposits that I have managed. It really is hard and requires scale to build deposits in any organization. And when you're building that, you spend a lot of money. You spend money to marketing. You spend money to your people who does this thing. You spend money to product development. You spend money on technology. You spend money on fraud. And when you combine all of the money that's spent, you add that to the money that you give back to the customers, the consumers, and that's a really big sticker price
mm,
versus the banks that work with us, we can do all of those things in a very scaled way. Why? We built the company to build scale for them. When a bank or credit union approaches us to work with us or we approach to them, I think the main value proposition that we provide is, hey, we design the product with you. You decide what the rate is going to be. We have no saying on that one. We market it for you. We handle all the operations. We handle the fraud. We take care of the fraud. And it is an end-to-end value proposition. And the whole system is created to be able to do this at scale. And with that scale, we can do this cheaper than others can do. And we say that we basically give back to the consumers, therefore, consumers are getting more.
mm.
So that's, I think, the angle from why we don't see similar higher rates from other larger institutions. And if I would look at the other side of the equation, is why other banks are not doing a marketplace. I think that question can be asked in any industry. Hey, I do what I do is one business model versus I'm a marketplace is another business model. I think that's too big of a leap, if you will. Are there other marketplaces who wants to do what we do? I'm sure the answer is yes, and I'm sure they're going to be doing it. There's going to be more and more competition at this space. But it seems like based on our market research, we are definitely on the forefront of this, creating a truly operational marketplace for the savings and the deposits, if you will.
Gotcha. And you were mentioning that you're able to do this on scale. So, for people who might not fully understand that, like how are you able to create scale and uh, manage to significantly reduce timeline for your partner banks?
Yeah. I'll mention about three different things. The first one is just the business model that we created, and like we created a business model which, when a bank signs an agreement with us, they say we are ready to go. Obviously, it takes sometimes a month, sometimes 6 months on to get that point. But really, once we get the we are ready to go, we can launch a bank as early, like as little as 2 weeks time frame. I think we are ranging from 1.5 week to 4 or 5 weeks, the latest, once everything is signed. Now, that's the construct that we created, the legal construct behind it, how everything works, the omnibus accounts. I think that portion is a little technical, but the construct, the business model that we created. So that's one dimension. The second dimension is the marketing. I think we were able to create such a granular marketing engine where we advertise our banks on behalf of them. We work like their digital marketing arms, and we have ongoing relationship with them. Now, Today, a bank wants to raise funds, they go away, another one comes, and then because not all 56 banks wants to raise the same amount, or not all 56 of them wants to raise at every single point in time more deposits. But when you have a constant market, the affiliates marketing always working, that engine, but then we
Mhm.
put other banks and credit unions in and out of that marketing engine in a very granular way. That's where the scale comes in, right? Things are not moving up and down. There's a constant demand to the affiliates, and we manage the supply, if you will, based on whom we are partnering with. So that's the other dimension of it. And then the size of and the volume of we are raising the deposit is fairly high for us, almost at the level of any big name that you can count of. All the learnings that comes into the fraud, like how we handle the fraud, at the end, handling fraud is not the easiest thing to do. You need to build the right process and procedures. And we just don't do that over and over and over again without learning, right? We start with one bank, we learn. We add the second
Mhm.
one, we learn. When you reach to 56, every incrementality helps with your next bank versus if you're a single organization, you have to go through all those learnings on your own. So that's the other dimension. And there are many more, Jinny. I think these are the top three things that comes into my mind on what scale means in our business.
Gotcha. So there's a lot of simplicity and complexity in what you shared. And I'm curious, like, as you're, bringing on one bank after another, you mentioned that fraud is like a big thing that you're also taking on. How much of your company's operating expense are you actually spending on fraud or preventing fraud?
So, without giving actual numbers, I was actually looking at the charts today. Since our inception to today, our fraud rates have come down like double-digit multiples. I mean, fraud is an area that you should never get comfortable with. But
Yeah.
it's this moment that's just more run the business activity. But it's always gonna keep me up at night. But at this moment, it is very, very manageable. It's a very small part of our earnings.
Would you say that the future of banking is more about technology or maintaining human relationships? And how does Raisin balance these like seemingly opposing forces?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the blend of two, and I see that very vividly at Raisin. So, on one hand, we work with banks. That's all relationship, right? We have a originations team that works with the banks all the time. Technology helps there on which banks we should go after, what's our CRM platform, etc. But at the end, how do you listen to your customer? Because banks and credit unions are our customers too, and it is complete B2B relationship. And on the other hand, we work with consumers, not necessarily directly all the time. We do talk with the consumers as well, but there's a scale there, right? The same thing holds true for our banks and credit unions as well. Like when you think about banking in its simplest form, banking is buying and selling money. How do you buy money? Through deposits. How do you sell money? It could be consumer businesses like credit cards, which Chase, Capital One are two big names, or it could be commercial. And when you look at the 4,000 banks, as you look at the smaller, especially the community banks, they have incredibly strong ties to their community. And commercial banking is, by definition, it still is a very relationship thing. The consumer banking is becoming more and more and more digital because that's where consumers want to interact with their financial platform as well. So the
Mhm.
future of banking to me is relationship is always going to be there, especially in a commercial setting. But everything is going to be digitized, and I think consumer is getting more and more digitized every single day.
Absolutely. And the the idea that banking is like in the business of buying and selling money, which is such a interesting concept to wrap your head around. And I from, I hear so much through social media that, like, money, for example, money doesn't exist. The whole concept of money does not exist. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that idea.
Yeah, I mean, like money is a construct that we built, right? It doesn't exist in the wild, and but very early on in civilization, we realized that bartering is not going to be the answer. So you need a currency that is applicable to everything. So we created it for sure. It doesn't exist in the wild, but in modern economy, whether you believe in the cryptocurrencies or everything, but a form of currency that doesn't make people rely on bartering is going to exist. Like that's the end. And whether it is the government-driven entity, government-driven currencies today, or the challenger currencies that's coming up, there's always going to be a concept of money. Uh, Even when you think about the bitcoins of the world, cryptocurrencies of the world,
Yeah.
that's money too, which is you anything that makes you not barter, that's money. So it
Yeah.
exists, Junie. That's going to be with us.
It exists and it not doesn't exist at the same time, and, like, I don't know, I've every time I go down this rabbit hole of trying to understand money and trying to understand, like, how to be more financially literate, I feel, I don't know, kind of more stupider as I learn more about it because 'cause I'm like, "Nothing makes sense." So, for someone who's been in
I
this
mean,
industry, I'm
the
just
one
curious,
thing
like, how
is,
you can manage understanding it.
yeah, I mean, this is one such an interesting thing that one of my sons finished high school, the other one is still at high school, and it is a shame that there is no class that tells you financial literacy. It's just unbelievable. Like,
Mhm.
how could we not teach financial literacy as a class?
Yeah.
Is beyond me. And thank God there are so many nonprofit organizations, etc. I think people learn from their parents, and for more underprivileged, thank God there are so many organizations out there to help with that. And I think it is all about the how. I think that's one of the purpose of us as well, that like removing the barriers in how we are going to be serving our customers. I was just looking at one statistics. Our customer age range is 18 to 104. We have 22 customers over 100 years old, and we serve every type of customer. And it's kind of cool having a digital platform and being able to serve at every age level today and removing the barriers for every one of them.
Mhm. So how do you service to someone who, um I'd imagine if you're over 100, you're a little bit less technically savvy, so when you have a tech product, a digital product, how do you market? How do you teach, someone in that age range how to use your how to interact and use your company?
So, two answers. Number one is actually, you'd be surprised how technically savvy some relatively older people can be. I am surprised. And this is the part I think the relationship components comes in as well, right? That we have a customer servicing team who gets calls all the time, and we don't do things on behalf of the customer. Typically, we try to show them how to do it on basically self-servicing and walk them through. Like if you go back to the old saying is like, teach me how you fish as opposed to giving me the fish. I think that's one of our philosophies. And obviously, if there is a direct ask coming in, we do the work as well. But that's my, you can't ever remove the human component from a financial model. Yes, we do not have branches. We will not gonna have branches more than likely, but we'll have people who's going to answer the calls and help our customers who wants their hands to be held along the way.
Mm. And, just going back into some pain points of, the US banking industry, and what this means for consumers. So big banks are downsizing a lot of their brick and mortar presence in many areas, and one third of those closures being in the low income communities. So how does Raisin view its role in this scenario, and is there a plan in where traditional banks are stepping out?
So I think it's true that the branch density is coming down for larger banks, but that's where the community banks are really like filling the void, if you will, especially when it comes to the commercial banking, their businesses around our community. So that portion is, I don't think it is underserved. It creates an underserved population on the consumer side in many cases. And this is, I think, the digital is closing the gap. And this is where what I mentioned, like we try to, like our aspiration is to remove the barriers for our customers. Like our platform is so simple. I don't know if you ever visited, but the one of the things that's so hard for banking platforms is you want to do everything, like from checking to savings to credit cards to everything, and it becomes a pretty hard to manage thing. And our platform is so easy to use that, by the way, this is what customers are telling us in public forums as well, that you connect your checking account, you move to our platform, and then boom, you get far more interest than you could have gotten otherwise. And I think the testament to that is just the age group who's attracted to us, right? Again, when I look at all the age groups, it's almost like equal distance at
Mm,
every age group on who our customers are. So we are truly able to serve a very broad age group, because when you look at especially fintechs, the age group tends to be the younger population.
mm,
For sometimes it is purpose driven, sometimes it's a coincidence. I think in our case, the situation is a little different, that we made things so simple, yet not so gamified. It still looks professional, and that attracts a very and great value, like undeniable great value, that attracts a population that I think one of our goals is to serve everyone and hopefully help in those communities where there is underserving happening, and we play a role in closing that gap.
mm. And it's incredible that you guys have been able to make really good traction in accommodating for such a wide range of communities and demographics, especially because, like, you get taught that as a small business owner, you get taught that like the riches are in the niches. So just stay with one type of demographic and just keep going after your target market. So I'm amazed that you were able to service to such a wide variety of segments.
Yes, I think it is that the savings as a concept is the nature of saving changes, but there's always savings, right? When it comes to older ages, like post either retirement age or pre-retirement, obviously the dollar amounts increase, but there's a very clear segment out there that who doesn't want to risk their principal in stock market, or at least a portion of it. They're going to have savings. When you link into the younger generation, I've seen some customers having maybe $20,000 in 7 different banks. And when we ask why, in our focus groups, they say, oh, this is for my wedding, this is for my vacation. So they compartmentalize different banks, like they put their money into different. So
Mm.
we found that use case as well, that becomes a very attractive component, explicitly try to serve the needs of every kind of customers. And thank God the savings is a need for at every age group.
Yeah, that's definitely me, what you just mentioned. I've got like, 20% of my savings in Betterment, and then I got my Robinhood, and then I have my Bank of America. It's like literally spread all over. So I will definitely
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
yeah, sign up for Raisin and consolidate all of that.
Yeah, once you get there, if you with one single account, you can put your money to 55 banks without going through the application process.
Yeah, that's amazing. Uh do you have all of your savings in Raisin?
All my non-retirement, non-stock savings are in Raisin. In fact, I was a Raisin customer became before I became the CEO. I
Oh, wow.
loved the
Okay.
whole business model. Yeah,
Wow, that's awesome being a customer to then being in charge. That's cool.
yeah, yeah. No, it was. It is. I love the value proposition.
That's that's amazing. That's like, you truly believing in a product and the vision for the company. Yeah, I find that a lot of people or a lot of people just end up in companies and roles because it's just a job for them. But for you, it's like you actually love the product, you love the value proposition, and then became part of the company's mission.
Yeah, that's a huge criteria for success they observed in my career. Like if you connect to the product that you are building, selling, whatever function that you are part of. And I was lucky enough to always find a connection to this. But I can unequivocally say that of all the products that I worked on, created, and everything, I think Raisin platform is the one that I feel most connected to.
Mm, I love that. So just a couple questions to wrap up our interview. So you actually had an interview that was published on Medium with Kieran Powell, who's the EVP of Channel V Media,
Mhm.
and you guys had discussed the 5 things you need to be a highly effective C-level leader of a fintech company. So what are they, if you remember?
So that's a good test for me. But I think I did mention it here as well. Number one is like, and this might not be in the right order, but number one is set audacious goals to your business. That's incredibly important, which requires a big learning curve for many people because, as again I mentioned, everybody wants to get an A. That's how our education has trained us. And if you set audacious goals, by definition, you're not going to get an A on everywhere. So that's hard. Number two is hire the best people. I think whom you hire is incredibly important. You always want to hire someone who has incredible potential and ideally better than you. And that's in itself is a big undertaking. And then next step is now that you have the great people, you have audacious goals, support them where they are. Because everybody's definition of support is different than
Mhm.
one another. And one person might need hand-holding, one person might need completely stepping aside or me stepping aside for that person. I'm hoping at least these are the 3 out of 5. The next thing to think through is without failing, you cannot learn. Failing is part of the process and creating the right environment so that people can feel confident of themselves that
Mhm.
they're going to fail and they're going to learn from that failure and then move on from that failure and create even better things out there. And last thing is you're going to center the humanity at the end. Uh, like we don't come like every one of us can make the same money that we are making in some other place. Like this is true for junior people, senior people. At the end, it's all about just center to your humanity, how you interact with your employees, your colleagues, your customers. I think keeping that as a guiding mechanism, if you will, is incredibly important. Did I get that 5 right? Or did I just say a completely different 5?
I think you got the 5 right. Yeah, just to summarize, it's 1, to set audacious goals, hire the right people, and support those people that you've hired. Create an environment where they can feel safe to fail and learn from their mistakes, and treat people with humanity and kindness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yep.
love that. That's good. It's good leadership across any industry. Yeah. So my last question for you, Chetan, is as the podcast name goes, it's called the Visionaries. So, what does the vision for your future look like? And again, I'm going to open it up for both, your professional life or your personal life, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. I think on the professional life, I'm lucky enough to lead an organization where I truly believe in the product that we are creating, adding value both to the consumers and the banks and the credit unions and to the society overall. Um, and there is a ton more work we need to do, right? We're gonna keep improving our platform, adding new features, and growing the team and keeping everyone happy and engaged. So I think the professional future path is super clear, and there's a lot of fun work in front of me. I think on the personal side, I am going, as anyone who would have kids, I'm going through this phase of sending the kids to college and to bigger and better places and observing them to being a best version of themselves and being real humans where I can't control their decisions. Not that I could in the past, but now I don't even see that. And observing that is incredible. And we give everything that we can. Now they're on their own. So, I love that. I love observing their successes and failures and becoming the best version of themselves.
Mhm. I'm sure it's also one of the scariest things to just kind of like let them into the real world.
Similar, not that different than the accountability, credibility thing that we talked about.
Yeah.
So I still kind of feel accountable, but maybe I'm not. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, they'll probably say that you're not, we're 18, we can do whatever we want. You're no longer you can't tell us what to do
Of
anymore.
course.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
that
they,
was
they
my
say that starting 13. So
okay. Yeah. Well, that was my last question, Chetan. So, again, I very much appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge. Like, I love hosting these podcasts because I get a chance to learn so much from amazing leaders like yourself. So, so thank you for being here.
thank you, Jinny. I appreciate it.